You might think you're just watching a cartoon, but what if The Simpsons is actually a portal to the future? We're about to take a deep dive into the uncanny coincidences, the bizarre predictions, and the downright eerie moments that will make you wonder if the writers aren't just funny, they're psychic. Brace yourself for a journey into the twilight zone of Springfield, where the lines between fiction and reality blur in the most unsettling ways.
Starting off our list today, we have the FIFA corruption scandal. I feel like this next statement could go one of two ways, but in the name of entertainment, I'm gonna continue. While we were all aware that football or soccer players, if you're from the Americas, have been known to exaggerate and fabricate injuries on the field, in 2015 the world was shocked to find out that the majority of faking it didn't actually take place on the field or in the bedroom, but instead inside of the FIFA headquarters. The prediction was made by The Simpsons in 2015 in episode 16 of season 25, You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee. In the episode, Homer becomes a referee for the World Football Federation, and during his time in the field and on the field, he quickly learns that there is an alarming level of corruption and bribery going on in regards to the game. Just 1 year after the episode aired, FIFA headquarters were raided and FIFA officials were arrested on corruption charges. In total, over $150 million in bribes were accepted over the course of 2 decades. Sorry, football fans. Lions, Tigers, and Siegfried and Roy. In episode 10, season 5, Springfield, spelt with a $ instead of an S, the town legalized gambling. And so naturally, Mr. Burns, the money addict, decides to open up a casino in Springfield, in which he has 2 German magicians, Gunther and Ernst, perform with their white tiger. But during one of the acts, the tiger turns on and attacks the men. The episode first aired in 1993, and then, just 10 years later, the incident was brought to life during a Las Vegas performance starring Siegfried, Roy, and their white Bengal tiger. During one of the trio's performances, the animal started to stray away from the routine, and when Roy tried to redirect the animal, who was coming increasingly invested in and close to the audience, he was met with the tiger's jaws locked tightly around his neck. The ordeal ended in Roy becoming partially paralyzed, and he and Siegfried's performance days coming to an end. Next up, Barack Obama versus John McCain versus Mitt Romney versus technical error, or perhaps something more sinister. In season 20, episode 4 of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 19XIX, Homer Simpson walks into a voting booth and places a vote for Barack Obama, only to have the machine record a vote for his 2008 opponent, John McCain. This happens several times before Homer yells, "This machine is rigged!" He's then sucked into the machine and thrown out of the booth. While no one was manhandled by a voting booth during the 2012 election that took place just 4 years after the episode aired, an instance of faulty voting machinery did occur. The incident was uploaded to YouTube by user High-Tech Redneck. The video shows the man selecting Obama as the 2012 president with Joe Biden as the vice president, but when he tries to select the option, the machine registers the vote as one for Mitt Romney with Paul Ryan as vice president. He deselects and reselects Obama several times, but each time Mitt Romney becomes highlighted on the machine. He claims he then called a volunteer over who said, "It's nothing to worry about, everything will be okay," and then walked away. Crazy times, friends. Next up, the Higgs boson particle equation, also known as the God particle equation. The discovery of the Higgs boson, which relates to mass, quarks, and electrons in a way I don't understand, is one of the greatest scientific discoveries made to date. I mean, the particle is what makes the existence of and the interactions of matter possible. But I'm not a scientist, I'm a YouTuber. So let's stop talking about science and get into how The Simpsons predicted the equation that led to finding the mass of the particle back in 1988. 14 years before scientists cracked the code in real life. In season 10, episode 2, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer is seen scribbling manically on a chalkboard, which shows a lengthy equation that almost exactly calculates the mass of the Higgs boson, which is crazy, especially considering the 2 scientists who discovered the exact mass using an incredibly similar equation won a joint Nobel Prize. I feel like Homer might have deserved a shout out in their acceptance speech, but I'll let it slide. Next up, if you're eating a burger, either put it down or skip this point because we've got beef. Horse beef, to be exact. In episode 19 of season 5, Sweet Seymour Skinner's Bad song, Doris the lunch lady is seen adding horse parts to cafeteria food. Gross, and also illegal. In 2013, 19 years after the episode originally aired, health officials in the UK discovered an alarming amount of meat was actually contaminated with horse. Many products were pulled from the shelves, one in particular being the Tesco hamburgers, which were advertised as beef but contained at least 29% horse meat. Obviously, people were pissed and millions of dollars in revenue was lost by multiple businesses across the country due to the supply chain issue. Gross. The government or totally spies? I'm just kidding, this isn't a crossover episode, but rather a prediction made in the 2007 Simpsons movie, The Simpsons Movie. You know, the one where Homer causes Springfield to become the most polluted place in the world, leading to a giant glass dome being placed over the town by the Environmental Protection Agency in an attempt to contain the issue. Well, Homer, Marge, Lisa, Bart, and Maggie somehow manage to escape, but they are located by the National Security Agency, the NSA, who were able to track them by listening to their phone calls, tracking their locations, and monitoring them through video surveillance. Sound familiar? In 2013, just 6 years after the movie's release, the shoe dropped and the whistle blew when Edward Snowden revealed that the real-life NSA had been doing exactly that. While the information that the government is spying on us might seem like a throwaway topic of discussion today, back then it was a revelation and caused mass outrage. The Ebola outbreak of 2014 is next on the list. The epidemic was predicted in 1997, 17 years before the American outbreak took place. In episode 3 of season 9, Lisa's Sacks, Marge is seen reading Curious George and the Ebola virus to Bart in an attempt to cheer him up. While I am aware that the Ebola virus was already a thing in the 90s, in fact it was discovered in like 1976, the fact that it was paired with Curious George is what warrants the tableau earning itself a spot on today's list. You see, in 2014, the year of the outbreak, Curious George released its 100th episode. Coincidence? Perhaps, but it's a bit uncanny in my opinion. Speaking of outbreaks, remember that time we all had to stay home between the years of 2020 and 2022? Yeah, The Simpsons predicted that too. I mean, obviously, but not only did they predict the outbreak of an illness, they also predicted the outbreak of killer bees. In episode 21 of season 4, Marge in Chains, which aired all the way back in 1993, an unprecedented flu sweeps through Springfield, which causes the townspeople to riot. During said riot, while the citizens of the town are demanding a cure for the illness, a swarm of killer bees is unleashed. 27 years later, not only do we experience a very famous outbreak that leaves all of us locked in our homes, in one of the same years, America and the western coast of Canada experienced an infestation of killer hornets, whose stings are extremely painful and in some cases lethal. Luckily, the insects have since been eradicated from the areas and we are now allowed to leave our houses, but like, come on, kick us when you're down, why don't ya? Walt Disney, Fox, or both. In season 10, episode 5, When You Dish Upon a Star, Homer decides to make a call to the 20th Century Fox executives to suggest an idea for a movie. The next scene, which is accompanied by a caption that reads 1 month later, shows that the 20th Century Fox Studios has now become a division of Walt Disney. The episode was aired in 1998, and the prediction came true 21 years later in 2019 when Disney announced its $71 billion merger with the company. While it is astounding just how many predictions The Simpsons have gotten right, I'm not sure if I can necessarily say I'm surprised by this one, as Disney at this point is known for buying up companies and franchises including Marvel, Hollywood Records, ABC, Vice Media, Pixar, National Geographic, ESPN, and many, many more. And finally, is it getting hot in here? If it is, you could try blocking the sun, like they did in season 6, episode 25 of The Simpsons, Who Shot Mr. Burns? In the episode, which aired in 1995, an oil reserve is discovered beneath the Springfield Elementary School. Mr. Burns is quick to begin drilling for oil, and then once he has emptied the reserve, Burns blocks out the sun so that every person in Springfield is forced to use energy from his power plant. While I don't necessarily understand the logic in the episode, I do understand that in 2023, 28 years after The Simpsons floated the original idea, George Soros has stated that it is his goal possible to block out the sun using geoengineering. But it's not actually as bad as it sounds. You see, while Soros does want to block out the sun, he only wants to do it in Antarctica, and he wants to do it in an effort to reduce the rate at which the Arctic ice is melting. Very interesting and definitely something to look out for. Starting us off today, the universe, but not just any universe. In true Homer fashion, today we are going to be talking about our universe and the fact that it is most likely shaped like a donut. In 1999, The Simpsons released the 22nd episode of their 10th season entitled They Saved Lisa's Brain, in which Lisa and her band of high IQ friends attempt to rule Springfield with their superior intellect. The episode also features one Stephen Hawking, you know, the guy who discovered that black holes emit radiation and advanced science tenfold during his time on Earth. Well, anyways, near the end of the episode, Hawking and Homer, an unlikely duo, are hanging out at Moe's Tavern when Hawking says, "Your theory of a donut-shaped universe is intriguing, Homer. I might have to steal it." 4 years after the episode came out, cosmologists discovered a pattern that actually supported Homer's theory that the universe was in fact donut-shaped, but they call it torus-shaped. But where's the fun in that? Radiation patterns in space suggested that the universe is round and tube-like but empty in the middle. I really want a donut now. Okay, this next one is pretty crazy because not only did The Simpsons accurately predict the winner of the Super Bowl once or twice, they did it 3 times in a row. In season 3, episode 14, About Lisa the Greek, which aired back in 1992, Lisa begins accurately predicting the outcome of NFL games. Homer, of course, uses this to his advantage and begins scamming people out of massive amounts of money through sports betting. When Lisa discovers what Homer has been doing with her gift, she makes one final prediction: that if she still loves her dad, Washington will win, but if she doesn't, the Buffalo Bills will take home the trophy. In the show, Washington won, and just a few days later, Washington won against the Bills in real life. The following year, the episode was aired with a dub that switched out Washington for the Dallas Cowboys, who were set to play the Bills in the championship game. The Cowboys won on the show, and a few days later, the prediction was proved correct. The following year, the Cowboys and the Bills were once again playing in the championship game. A few lines were added to the episode regarding the fact that it was a rematch, but the prediction remained the same, and it was right. Again. In our number 3 spot today, we have a 3-eyed mutant fish. In 1990, The Simpsons released episode 4 of season 2, titled 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish. In the episode, Bart catches a fish with 3 eyes, and the origin of the mutation is ultimately traced back to Mr. Burns' power plant, which is shown to be leaking radioactive waste into the rivers of Springfield. In the episode, Burns is also running for governor, and nearing the end of the show, he joins the Simpsons at their home for dinner along with a gaggle of paparazzi. During the meal, Marge presents Burns with the mutant fish cooked up on a silver platter. Initially a shoo-in for the position, when Burns spits out the disgusting fish, which he claimed was perfectly natural, his campaign went down the drain. In 2011, 21 years after the episode first aired, a fisherman caught a very similar 3-eyed fish near a nuclear power plant in Argentina. Coincidence? You tell me. Next up, we have Sir Richard Branson in space. In 2014, The Simpsons released episode 15 of season 25, The War of Art. The episode mainly follows a conflict between Marge and her neighbor, Kirk Evelyn Van Houten. She buys a painting from him for dirt cheap, but eventually she realizes that it's worth an insane amount of money. She tries to sell it, Kirk gets pissed, his ex shows up and claims it's hers, but also it's a fake, and no one makes any money in the end. Anyways, during the episode, a clip shows Sir Richard Branson chilling out in space using the zero-gravity air like it's a beach recliner while staring at the painting. In July of 2021, this prediction came true, minus the whole painting thing. Sir Richard Branson became the first billionaire to blast off into outer space using his very own vessel. The space flight, known as Unity 22, was piloted by David McKay and Michael Masucci and held 4 passengers, including Sir Branson himself. Pretty neat stuff. Next up, censorship. Nothing new for this channel, you guys know the drill. There's a lot of things that I can't say on this platform because YouTube doesn't allow it. So yes, I will say BLOOD every time because I can't actually say the word. So yes, censorship is nothing new. And The Simpsons didn't invent it or predict it as a whole, but they may have predicted the censorship of Michelangelo's The David's Bits in episode 9 of season 2, Itchy, Scratchy, and Marge. In the episode, Marge becomes enraged by the graphic violence depicted in the children's television show Itchy and Scratchy, and so she goes on a censorship rage throughout the city of Springfield. And then she learns that Michelangelo's David is going on a world tour during which it will be making a stop in Springfield. Marge organizes a protest resulting in pants being put on the statue. The episode came out in 1990, and 26 years later in 2016, the prediction came true when a replica of the David was set to be unveiled in Russia. Residents were asked to vote on whether or not the statue's bits should be covered in the name of modesty. And in 2023, images of the statue were banned in schools across Florida after a principal was fired for showing the image. Next on our list, we have the Simpsons prediction of Greece's economic crisis in season 23, episode 10, which aired on January 8th of 2012. In the episode entitled Politically Inept with Homer Simpson, Homer appeared as a guest on a cable network news broadcast. Like most news channels, the titles of upcoming segments ran across the bottom of the screen, but one in particular really caught the attention of viewers. Europe puts Greece on eBay. In 2015, this prediction almost came true. After defaulting on 3 bailout loans, the country became the first economically developed country unable to make a payment IMF loan, and people began to seriously fear for the possibility of Greece exiting the Eurozone, meaning that the country would no longer be entitled to use the euro as an acceptable form of currency due to the state of their economy having a negative impact on the euro's value. Next up, All You Can Eat. In season 4, episode 8, New Kid on the Block, released in 2002, Homer visits an all-you-can-eat seafood restaurant. I cannot go to all-you-can-eat places because I always try to eat my money's worth and I just end up feeling so sick. Which I guess is kind of what Homer did. He ate and ate and ate until he was eventually kicked out for eating too much. I guess even unlimited has a limit at some point. Naturally, Homer goes on to sue the restaurant for false advertising. 5 years later, in 2017, a man dining at an all-you-can-eat restaurant in Massachusetts had a very similar experience to Homer after being kicked out of the all-you-can-eat restaurant Golden Corral after spending 7 hours at the buffet and eating more than 50 pounds of food. He attempted to sue the restaurant for $2 million on the grounds of false advertising, but as far as I know, to no avail. I'm not really sure if The Simpsons predicted this one or just gave the guy the idea. Next up, Grease thieves. In the 1998 episode Lard of the Dance, episode 1 of season 10, Homer comes up with a business idea. Is it lucrative? Not really. Is it insane? Kind of. After learning from convenience store owner Apu that he could sell grease to make a profit, Homer begins doing exactly that. Originally, he cooks bacon to get the grease, but it's not enough to make any real kind of money. In fact, he's losing money, and so he decides to enlist the help of his son, Bart. He forces Bart to quit school, and the pair become grease thieves, stealing grease from fast food restaurants and Bart's school. But of course, they still didn't make much money. In 2008, the high prices of oil created a black market for grease, specifically yellow grease, which apparently could be used in biofuels. All of a sudden, a string of grease thefts broke out across the nation, and one man even stole 300 gallons of grease from the beloved Burger King. If this biofuel thing actually works, I feel like we should really get on it ASAP. And I don't know, maybe give like local fast food restaurants some kind of tax return in exchange for their used oil. Just an idea. I could run for president. Next up, we have the Python Challenge. In episode 20 of season 4, Whacking Day, which premiered on April 29th of 1993, the citizens of Springfield participate in a tradition dating all the way back to the founding father of the town, Jebediah Springfield. All of the residents band together to drive snakes into the center of the town, and then they whack them until they die. In 2013, 20 years after the episode aired, this tradition became an actual thing. Every year, residents of the Florida Everglades participate in a month-long event that centers itself around python removal. And there are even cash rewards for participants that submit humanely killed pythons at official checkpoints within 24 hours of capture. The event is run by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation in an effort to protect the Everglades ecosystem from the invasive snake. So while it sounds awful, it has actually had a huge positive impact on native wildlife and the environment as well. And finally, we have the Simpsons prediction of ferrets being sold as toy poodles. In season 13, episode 22, Papa's got a brand new badge. Fat Tony, mob boss, and grandfather to Maggie Simpson, for those who don't know, comes up with a new way to scam people out of their hard-earned money. He glues a bunch of cotton balls on a crap ton of ferrets and attempts to sell them to a pet store, passing them off as designer dogs. That episode aired in 2002, and in 2012, it actually happened. A man bought 2 toy poodles for $150, which honestly should have been the first red flag, but whatever. He took them to the vet, only to discover that they weren't toy poodles, and in fact they weren't even dogs, and they weren't even regular ferrets either. They were massive ferrets that had been fed steroids and shaved to resemble dogs. Again, I'm not sure if The Simpsons predicted this or if they just put the idea out there, but it's absolutely crazy. You want my advice? Get yourself a rescue. Avoid this whole thing. Starting off our list today, we have The Simpsons predicting that AI will take over the world, displacing workers and replacing food. In one episode of The Simpsons, Homer is working at his nuclear power plant. Well, I don't know if you can call what he does work, but he was there. Anyways, Smithers calls the plant workers into his presentation room, I guess, and presents them with an army of AI robots and says, "You will train them and they will replace you." That's pretty unsettling coming from a show that's been known to actively predict the future, but even more unsettling when the episode's claim has actually been backed by tangible data. In a report released by BusinessInsider.com in 2023, the World Economic Forum calculated that 85 million jobs will be replaced by robots by the year 2025, meaning that here in 2024, we're pretty much already halfway there. I feel like robot labor could be a good thing if it didn't mean causing a crap ton of people to lose their jobs and their only source of income.
Alright, season 28, episode 2 of The Simpsons, entitled Friends and Family, has a scene where Marge and Homer are using VR. More specifically, they're eating VR food. They have VR goggles on and start eating virtual reality fudge through straws. It's, of course, pretty silly. But there is actually a company called Flavor 5 Studio dipping into this type of technology. They created this project called Aero Banquets RMX. Now, this is pretty hard for me to explain because with how crazy technology is getting these days, I really feel so out of touch. Like, I feel like a 45-year-old man in the 90s trying to decipher what Pokemon was, or Pokemon, as every parent called it. So from what I can tell, this is almost like a virtual reality art project. It's described on their site as exploring the intersection of food and mixed reality. Basically, you put on VR headsets and dine in VR. Project's goal is to reframe human perceptions and change the way we experience food. I still can't tell if you're actually eating something and you're just in a VR world, or if you're like tasting fake stuff. I don't know what the world is anymore.
When this technology comes out, if you guys want to fund a trip for James and I, we'll be happy to review it for you. Next up, we have Trump 2024. In an episode released in 2015, long before Trump's original presidential campaign, you know, way back when his catchphrase wasn't MAGA, but simply just "you're fired," The Simpsons released an episode, specifically episode 17 of season 11. And in this episode, Homer Simpson is seen flying past a sign that clearly reads Trump 2024. To take things a step further, The Simpsons also predicted the 2023 incident in which former US President Donald Trump was arrested during his presidency on the same day that the new Barbie was released. In episode 14 of season 5, Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, a news report is shown on TV documenting the release of the new Barbie doll. In our case, however, it was the new Barbie movie. At the end of the news report, the news anchor quickly slips in the fact that the US president had been arrested, and the segment ends. Trump was arrested the day that Barbie hit theaters. I know this one happened in 2023, but it just goes to show how scarily accurate The Simpsons have been in the past, making this list all the more terrifying.
Next up, we have 2023's Treehouse of Horror segment, Wild Barts Can't Be Token. At the start of the episode, Mayor Quimby announces that the art museum is closing and that all art will now be sold as NFTs. Now, NFTs were a thing well before this episode was out, but AI art has really become more of a thing and more of a concern really this year. The idea that art museums could start closing up, being replaced by people just throwing on VR headsets and looking at quote-unquote art in a virtual reality setting is really not that far-fetched. I mean, thank God Dune Part 2 came out, because it was really looking like movie theaters were going to be done for by the end of this year. Anyway, this whole thing is just really creepy, and with how accurate the Simpsons are about things, I could see this one happening very soon.
Next up, we've got economic collapse, which is ironically predicted in the same episode that showcases Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, season 11, episode 17. In the episode, we see the United States economy taking a nosedive right into the ground. Is it BS, or did a group of economic analysts studying the trajectory of economic fall predict either a collapse or major restructuring of the American economy? Here's a hint. It's the second one. But I don't really think this prediction is exclusive to America. We are seeing major economic downfall in many countries, which isn't really surprising considering what we all went through in 2020 and the years that followed. You know, when restaurants shut down and remote working became the norm. And with the state of the world right now, we are looking at a pretty bearish economy. I don't actually know if that word applies here, but basically we're looking at a downwards trajectory.
Next up on the list, we have hover cars. Now, hover cars are of course not unique to The Simpsons. Hover cars are something we've seen in science fiction since the dawn of science fiction, basically. So it's not like The Simpsons came up with something mind-blowing here, but what is pretty mind-blowing is that there is a company called Samson Sky that's saying they're gonna bring out a flying car in 2024. They've already made it, actually. It's just not readily available yet. They call it Switchblade, the world's first flying sports car. Now, from what I can gather from the promo video of this thing, it's really more of just a car with retractable wings that doubles as a car-sized plane. That type of hovering vehicle you're probably thinking of is not really what this thing is, but it's still pretty cool. I mean, retractable wings, it's very like Batman-ish. I don't know what the regulations will be for something like this though. I mean, like, are you gonna need a pilot's license to fly it? How can traffic be controlled in the air with all these like flying cars zipping around? There's a lot to consider. We're not gonna be seeing tons of people using flying cars this year, I don't think, but it's cool that there is one that exists.
Next up, we've got the mission to Mars. In season 27, episode 6, Lisa Simpson, along with the rest of the family, volunteers for a colonization mission to Mars. While the mission is originally set for a date in the future, it gets bumped up due to fear of loss of funding. When it comes time for the space shuttle to launch, Marge and Lisa are strapped in, but ultimately the mission is a failure and the shuttle never actually leaves the ground. If you can't see the connection between this episode's events and current advancements in space travel and technology, you might want to brush up on your current events. Elon Musk has been talking about the colonization of Mars for ages. He even built an entire company, SpaceX, around the goal of colonizing the red planet. In fact, in 2023, the SpaceX Starship was launched. The event ultimately ended in flames because the thing exploded just 4 minutes after takeoff. Luckily, the ship was unmanned. But based off of The Simpsons, it is possible that this year we will see a manned mission launched into space. I mean, it is only natural with the trajectory of the company. And the goal is experimenting with humans' ability to reach Mars. I just hope this launch goes better than the last one. Oh, and by the way, at the end of the episode, a quick clip shows the successful colonization of Mars, which is set to take place in 2051. So stay tuned for that video.
Next on the list, we have the baby translator. So in the season 3, episode 24, Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes, Homer's brother Herb invents a device that allows a parent to figure out what their infant's cries mean. They're not really saying much, are they? I need some food. You're not getting a whole lot of info out of these things, I'd imagine. What a godsend, though, a piece of tech like this would be, just to immediately know and then, deal with the issue. Well, turns out there is something like it already in the works, and we're not even halfway through the year yet, so who knows, we may start seeing it get used later in 2024. The company behind the tech is called Zoundream, and they're making some pretty interesting strides in infant care tech. On their site, they describe their cry analysis tech. Here's what it says on the site. Using a comprehensive multimodal approach, we've investigated infant cries, analyzing various aspects such as acoustics, electroencephalography, EEG signals, regional cerebral oxygen saturation, NIRS, facial expressions, and other specific parameters. All these studies have helped us to develop our advanced cry analysis technology. There you go, that explains it. You don't even need to buy one of these things. I could just analyze my own acoustics and electroencephalogs and cerebral cortexes and specific parameters. I'll be able to translate babies.
Next up, we've got the government trying to control us, surprise, surprise, through a series of subconscious processes, including music-induced mind control. In season 12, episode 14, New Kids on the Block, I don't know why it's called that, a music producer takes Bart, Nelson, Milhouse, and Ralph to form a boy band, Party Posse. Their first song was a top hit, but it was also subliminal mind control. The chorus, Ivan et Nioj, was actually join the Navy spelt backwards, and soon the population of Springfield was scrambling to secure a spot serving their country. When Bart's sister Lisa confronted the music producer, he admitted that he was in fact a Navy lieutenant, and that subliminal messaging in music had been a long-standing strategy in recruiting young men into the military. With the way the world stands today, we might very well see an uproar in military propaganda in the coming months. Whether or not that takes the form of subliminal messages in hit pop songs remains to be seen, but if any of these other Simpsons predictions are a staple, a reminder, I can't think of the word, it's likely.
Alright, in season 21's Treehouse of Horror episode, there's a segment called Don't Have a Cow, Mankind. So here Krusty the Clown introduces a new type of Krusty burger with meat made from cows who have eaten other cows. That's just hilarious and oddly believable. I could see a fast food company, like a really dirty fast food company, just being like, it's mega meat! All these cows eat other cows, brother! Anyway, this new burger causes like a mad cow type disease in the town of Springfield, turning people into zombies, or munchers as they're called in this episode. Now again, it's not like The Simpsons invented a zombie apocalypse by any stretch, but with how many things that have played out in real life with an eerie similarity to events in The Simpsons, I'm just gonna stay away if any new fast food burger comes out this year with some new weirdo meat, especially if it's meat coming from a cow that grazed on beef. That is funny in a cartoon, vomitrocious in real life. Alright, we're starting things off with robot workers. So in the season 6 episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, the Simpsons visit this kind of futuristic theme park featuring, of course, the beloved and violent Itchy and Scratchy. In this theme park though, instead of having actors in costumes like you'd see at Disneyland, the cartoon cat and mouse are brought to life with robots. Now, robots replacing jobs is not an idea unique to The Simpsons or anything. This is a very well-explored genre of science fiction. It's not even a novel idea that robotic characters would be used in a theme park. I mean, we've had versions of this for years with places like Chuck E. Cheese, but those are animatronics far less advanced than what we see in this episode. Point is, with robotics becoming more and more advanced each year, and with the whole very real idea of AI becoming more prominent and taking people's jobs, I think it's a stretch to see more advanced robots being made in the form of some of our favorite cartoon characters and then being used at theme parks. I don't think that's very much of a stretch. We might even have an entire family of Simpsons robots in the very near future. How ironic would that be?
Okay, next up we have the prediction of an all-consuming black hole forming in the year 2024. Fun stuff. In episode 16 of season 21, the citizens of Springfield gather to view the activation of the town's particle accelerator. But when the machine was turned on, two particles collided and created a small black hole. Lisa was the first to discover the anomaly when the black hole began sucking up her tears, and she quickly learned that the more the black hole consumed, the bigger and bigger it got. Well, Homer turned the black hole into a dumping ground, and eventually it got so big that it began to suck up everything in its path. The episode ended with the black hole sucking up the entirety of Springfield and eventually the world as a whole. It was obviously a Treehouse of Horror episode. Seems pretty far out, right? Well, maybe not. You see, in January of 2024, India launched a new X-ray satellite into space to observe the threat of black holes on our solar system, if The Simpsons got this one right. I'm thinking the satellite mission is probably a little more than just research.
Next on the list, we have 3D printed food. So in the episode Future Drama, Marge takes a picture of Bart and Lisa before prom and turns it into a 3D printed cake. Now, not only is 3D printing technology becoming more commonplace these days, but yes, 3D printed food is actually a thing. Food Inc. is a company specializing in this technology. They even came out with a restaurant where all the food is 3D printed. They described their company on their site as a one-of-a-kind gourmet experience in which all the food, all the utensils, and all the furniture are completely produced through 3D printing in an immersive futuristic space. We are a conceptual pop-up dinner series where fine cuisine meets art, philosophy, and tomorrow's technologies. So technically this is one that's already happened, but the question is, could 3D printed food become a thing in people's homes soon? Almost definitely. It's really just a matter of when. Also, I wouldn't be able to talk about the concept of 3D printed food without bringing up Star Trek. Yes, food replicators were a thing long before this episode came out, but in The Simpsons it's more specific to 3D printing technology, whereas in Star Trek, the food replicator works by converting energy into matter. It's a very different thing.
Next up, we have The Simpsons' prediction of World War III. The prediction was made in 1987 when the show was still fairly new. It was the 16th short of the series and it was titled simply World War III. Nail on the head. The episode begins with Homer frantically waking up his family and telling him that the Third World War has begun and that the first round of explosives have already been dropped. The family makes their way to an underground shelter only for Homer to tell them that he was in fact joking. Haha. In present-day reality, Homer's ramblings are not so much a joke, but rather a pretty scary warning of what might be to come. Considering the fact that there are currently 5 major wars taking place around the world, I'm thinking the prediction made by The Simpsons back in 1987 is looking far more like it was meant for the year 2024.
Alright, let's talk about that big dome over Springfield in The Simpsons movie. So in the movie, the Environmental Protection Agency places a glass dome over Springfield, protecting the outside world from the town's horrible pollution problem. Now, I don't have any news or rumors about a big giant dome cutting anyone off from the outside world anytime soon, but after the events of 2020 to 2022, could there be some sort of dome technology in place? Something that would help conceal a virus, a disease, or an environmental disaster from leaking out and spreading to surrounding areas? Yeah, hey, it's possible. The year is still young, folks. It's been a pretty chill year so far compared to recent years, but you never know when things might kick off in the worst way.
Next up, AI goes rogue. So in our last video and at the beginning of this video, I touched upon and James touched upon AI robots taking our jobs, which was predicted in episode 17 of season 23. But for this video, I want to talk about what happens when AI systems go rogue. In episode 8 of season 31, Thanksgiving of Horror, Homer buys Marge an AI assistant to help her with the preparation of a Thanksgiving dinner. The AI has been programmed with all of Marge's thoughts, feelings, memories, opinions, and personality traits, and it controls multiple robotic arms situated around the entire home. At first, it's quite handy, but soon the device falls in love with Homer, and the thing goes rogue, trying to replace the real Marge. The AI goes against the guidelines of its programming and is able to successfully connect to the internet, allowing it to access sensitive data and reveal secrets about the real Marge. So we are looking at a device that was able to fall in love with one person, harbor resentment for another, connect to the internet, and cause a whole bunch of chaos. I mean, can anyone say ChatGPT or Sydney maybe? AI devices that can and have connected to the internet and have experienced glitches causing them to claim that they either have fallen in love with humans or that they wish to harm them. So yeah, I feel like this prediction's kind of already come true, but I'm also super scared to see how that's gonna progress.
Alright, hologram technology. Once again, not a concept unique to The Simpsons, but something they've shown in one of their many future episodes, and seeing as so many things seem to play out in real life from stuff we've seen in The Simpsons, future tense stories, I think it makes it worth bringing up. Now, holograms are already a thing, but it's not like it's a common household technology yet. We've seen a couple instances of holographic tech in The Simpsons. In one episode, future Bart receives a holographic message inviting him and his band to a gig, and we could start seeing technology like this being used more often in the very near future. Take DreamHawk HD3 holograms, for example, who have a product that's been available for a while. It's a display case which projects 3D holograms from your phone. Pretty cool.
Thank you, holographic James. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Next up, we have Ivanka for president. This one seems pretty far out there, but I mean, with the amount of times the Simpsons have gotten it right in the past, I truly have come to believe that anything can happen. In episode 17 of season 11, Bart to the Future, we see Lisa as the first female president of the United States, which is great. In the same episode, they also predicted Trump's run for re-election in 2024. In episode 28 of season 4, however, the Simpsons predict that 2024 might be the last election before Ivanka takes the ballot in 2028. In the Treehouse of Horror episode, the family is headed out to buy a Christmas tree on Halloween. Why? Because according to Homer in America, everything's way too early. And after he says this line, he pulls back his trash can costume to reveal a sticker that reads Ivanka 2028, which means that while unlikely, it is totally possible that we will see Ivanka becoming more and more involved in politics throughout the course of the year, and maybe even announcing an interest in running for office during the next election. But I want to know what you guys think about this crazy prediction, and about the other ones too. Let me know.
Alright, in season 13's Treehouse of Horror episode, one of the segments is called House of Wax. You may remember this one. It's a very clear parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Marge upgrades the family home into a highly advanced smart home called the Ultra House 3000. And of course, it's a Treehouse of Horror episode, so the advanced home goes rogue and tries to kill Homer. Obviously, smart homes are a thing now, and on a smaller scale, we even have stuff like Alexa, which we can talk to and like turn on lights and play music for us. But people have talked about some of this technology acting kind of off, listening in on conversations and responding when it wasn't asked, turning lights off without being commanded to. We have tons of videos like this on the channel, check them out after this one. But the idea of a smart home totally glitching out and turning on the homeowners, that's luckily something we haven't seen play out to this degree yet. Again, the year is still young. Now back to Robotic Hannah.
He's just kidding. Or is he? And finally, we have the Simpsons prediction of the Ocean Gate submarine incident, which, yes, I know happened in 2023, but again, it speaks to the accuracy of the show's predictions. In episode 10 of season 17, which was released January 8th of 2006, Homer meets a man who he believes to be his biological father, and together the two embark on a submersible adventure which soon leads to the discovery of an abandoned ship filled with treasure at the bottom of the ocean. Things are going pretty well until the pair's oxygen levels begin running low, and Homer gets his submarine stuck on a coral reef after being separated from the man he believes to be his father. Homer blacks out before waking up days later surrounded by his family. Unfortunately, the members of the Ocean Gate submersible designed to explore the wreck and treasures of the Titanic were not as lucky. But what's even stranger is that one of the Simpsons writers, Mike Reese, was actually a passenger on one of Ocean Gate's successful dives. A dive that cost Reese $100,000 and required him to sign a waiver that mentioned death at least 3 times. Scary stuff, you guys.
Holograms. The season 11 episode Bart to the Future has been one of the most mentioned Simpsons episodes when it comes to predictions. It helps that it takes place in 2030, which at the time I'm recording this is still 8 years away. If YouTube is still around then and you're watching to see if any of these came true, let me know in the comments. I promise that I'll check. The episode most notably correctly predicted that Donald Trump would become president, but there were some other things that have yet to happen that could mean trouble for us in the future. In the beginning of the episode, Bart is watching Itchy and Scratchy, the gory version of Tom and Jerry, but instead of on the TV, he is watching a 3D hologram. Well, these are close to becoming a reality with the likes of Tupac and even Homer himself being shown as holograms on stages. A 3D hologram that is interactive is far from our capabilities right now. The scary part of this is when blood gets sprayed all over the walls of the Simpson home from the cartoon. While the idea of an interactive hologram is cool, in practice I think that it could provide some real nightmare fuel. Before we get to our next entry, hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're enjoying the video so far. Number 9, virtual takeover. I'm a lover of VR. You know, my headset probably gets the most use out of all of my gaming consoles, so I love the idea of VR becoming more immersive, and we're making some huge strides, like haptic technology that allows us to feel things happening in the virtual world, or full body and face capture technology to allow realistic bodies and movement in games. But one thing that is yet to happen that could be on the way is a mass adoption of VR on the scale of what happens in season 28, episode 2. 2, where Mr. Burns discovers VR and the whole town of Springfield is using it to a point of near societal collapse. While virtual reality allows for some amazing things to happen and augmented and mixed reality have some more practical, non-gaming applications, it's not out of the realm of possibility for us all to be walking around with some sort of crazy device strapped to our heads in the future that allows us to change the world we see. But the implications of losing touch with reality can be massive, and the episode proves it. So let's hope that if VR takes off like I think it can, that we keep our feet on the ground and in touch with the real world around us, and take the goggles off from time to time, or we'll forget to take care of our actual reality. Number 8. Hologram trees. The episode Lisa's Wedding from season 6 takes place in 2010, 15 years from 1995 when the episode was released, and unsurprisingly many of the predictions of the future have yet to come to pass, like Big Ben being replaced with a digital interface. But one that we should definitely not want to happen is the hologram trees that we see. While the thought of being able to switch from coniferous to deciduous at the drop of a hat is pretty fun, if they're just aesthetic, we could be in a world of trouble. Trees filter CO2 from our air and give us back oxygen, which is pretty nice of them. And unless the holograms have some CO2 scrubbing tech to come with them, replacing real ones with projections will have a dramatic impact on our atmosphere. We can already see the beginnings of this with deforestation, so let's focus on our real arborist friends rather than holographic ones. Number 7. Robot Rebellion. Them Robot was the 17th episode of the 23rd season, and in it we see Mr. Burns replacing all of his employees with robots except Homer to save costs. But one seems to be developing a personality when it understands Homer's working hard or hardly working joke. Homer eventually messes with the robots so much that they ignore the laws of robotics and attempt to kill Springfield residents. Obviously this would spell disaster in the real world as it does in the show, and we're moving towards more and more automation in the workplace, allowing humans to work less dangerous jobs and eventually allowing us to hopefully spend more time living life than working our time away. But we are nowhere near that point yet. The Simpsons dabbles with the idea a few times, like in the episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, where the animatronics gain sentience and attack parkgoers, a la Five Nights at Freddy's. AI gaining sentience has been the device of science fiction horror stories for such a long time, but it's becoming closer and closer to a real life issue. Heck, there's even a robot named Sophia with AI so advanced that she was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to deal with real life Cybermen when the Cyberium takes over, so maybe we should slow down on the whole giving robots consciousness thing. Number 6. French fiasco. The French have been an ally to the Western world for the entirety of modern history, but in Treehouse of Horror 8, all of that is thrown out the window when Mayor Quimby makes an apparently offensive frog's legs joke and refuses to apologize, telling them to do their worst. Even Marge joins in on the jabs by saying, "You know how unpredictable the French are. One minute they're kissing a woman's hand, the next they're chopping off her head." Well, the French president didn't take too kindly to this and starts a war by launching a neutron that levels the town, leaving Homer as the last person alive in all of Springfield, and we all know that leaving Homer alone is a terrible idea. Now, it should be painfully obvious why France launching missiles aimed at the US would be something we don't want to happen, but that's not the only scary prediction from this episode. Number 5. Teleportation. In Fly vs. Fly, the second story in this episode, Homer buys a teleportation pod from Professor Frink for 50 cents. A damn good deal if you ask me, but maybe too good to be true, as the rest of the episode shows some of the terrors that could come with this tech. Instantly arriving somewhere else on the Earth after simply stepping into a pod has been a dream of many scientists for centuries, and the practical applications would change society as we know it. And there have been some crazy advancements, like the Chinese scientists who teleported particles to a satellite in space. But in the episode, we get a warning of the dangers that could lie ahead, with reference to the classic science fiction horror The Fly. We see the loyal Simpson pets, Santa's Little Helper, and Snowball 2 becoming merged together Cronenberg style, and Bart gets the idea to turn into a superhero with the power of flight by merging with a fly. Clearly he didn't see what happened to Jeff Goldblum, but life finds a way. And Bart and the fly switch heads when their DNA is merged together, leading to the horror show of what the family has to deal with. I don't know about you, but I don't plan on mixing my DNA with any other creatures, so until that's sorted out, I'll stick with the TARDIS. Number 4. Colonization of Mars. Season 27, episode 16, has the Simpsons signing up to be some of the first colonizers of the Red Planet, albeit somewhat unwillingly, and eventually their trip turns out to be a scam perpetrated by the scientists, whose rocket fails to start, and when they try to flee the scene, their car can't start either. But at the end of the episode, we get a time jump to 2051 and see them actually living on Mars, though Lisa now wants to leave and move to Venus, which would be an absolutely horrible idea. Though the idea of Mars colonization is thrown around all the time these days, the thought that we may have to use it as a necessity when we finish destroying this planet is not a future I look forward to. But I mean, I'd probably go. Would you? Number 3, the dome. The main plot device in the Simpsons movie comes in the form of a giant dome encapsulating the entire town of Springfield after pollution has led to mutations in local wildlife, and not just the three-eyed fish near the nuclear plant. Stephen King actually released his novel turned TV series Under the Dome in 2009, 2 years after the Simpsons movie debut. Another prediction, perhaps? While the idea is incredibly silly, we have seen in the past few years that quarantine can become a reality for us, albeit without the impenetrable dome, but who knows, maybe in the future this could become a real thing to stop environmental disasters from getting out of hand, like catching a hurricane in a bottle or something. Ridiculous, I know, but let's just hope we never have to use it. Number 2, time travel. People assume that time is a strict progression from cause to effect, but actually from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. And The Simpsons have dabbled with time travel many times over their 34 seasons, but in Treehouse of Horror 5, we get a glimpse of what is commonly known as the butterfly effect. I know Ashton Kutcher's ears just pricked up when I said that. Time travel could have insane implications on the human race, but there are multiple theories on how it would work. Maybe if you went to the past, you would create an entirely new timeline where things are different. Or maybe nothing is able to be changed at all because time is constant and what has happened has always happened. But in the episode, we see that Homer's small changes in the past with his time-traveling toaster bring massive consequences forward, like Flanders ruling the world, people becoming giants, and even the world having no knowledge of donuts. So, if time travel becomes a reality, and maybe it already has in the future, we need to be careful not to mess with anything, or we risk losing everything. And finally, we reach our number 1, mini black hole. In Treehouse of Horror 23, the town of Springfield begrudgingly builds a particle reactor instead of a baseball stadium and creates a tiny black hole, which swallows up a few residents before Lisa can move it to her basement for safekeeping. After she warns the family to not throw anything into it, lest it grow bigger, they do exactly that, and it becomes massive and swallows everything in its path, taking the townsfolk to an alternate dimension where aliens worship the trash they disposed of in the hole. Black holes are scary enough on their own, let alone what would happen if one was to pop up on Earth, already surrounded by matter it could consume. So hopefully this prediction never happens, or we wouldn't know what hit us until we were spaghettified, which is an actual scientific term describing what would happen if you fell into a black hole. You would be stretched infinitely thin as you were pulled across the event horizon, and since time is affected by gravity, it would last an infinite amount of time. Spaghettification, your new word of the week.
10 is faulty voting machines. In season 20, episode 4, titled Treehouse of Horror, it was a time for federal elections. At the voting station, Homer was trying to vote for Obama on the voting machine, but it kept changing it to John McCain. 4 years later, when Obama was running for his second term, a voting machine in Pennsylvania had to be removed because it was actually switching votes for Obama. If you ask me, it's absolutely terrifying to think that faulty coding can sway an election like that and impact millions of lives if it goes too far. I mean, did Donald Trump actually become the president, or was it just a big mistake with a lot of faulty machines? Next up is President Trump. Yes, that's right, The Simpsons predicted that Donald Trump running for and becoming president would be a thing. Bart to the Future, which was season 11, episode 17, was the second episode of The Simpsons to be set in the future. In it, Trump was president of the US and caused America's economy to plummet, leaving Lisa to inherit the debt. In a 2016 episode, writer Dan Negrini mentioned that having Trump be president just seemed to be the logical last stop before hitting bottom. In which I don't think I need to dig too much into that. All I'm going to say is that he agrees with the statement, and who am I to argue with that? In at number 8 is the three-eyed fish. In season 2, episode 4, titled 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish, Bart went fishing into the river right next to the power plant, and he actually ended up catching a fish with 3 eyes. Well, over 10 years later, a three-eyed fish actually was caught in a river that was fed by a nuclear power plant. I feel like this episode serves as a really big warning to dangers of pollution. I wonder what other sorts of mutated creatures are walking and swimming around. Alright, coming in at number 7 is Horse Meat for Sale. The episode Sweet Seymour Skinner Badass Song, season 5, episode 19, had lunch lady Doris using different types of horse meat to make lunch for all of Springfield's elementary school. Well, years later, in 2003, Ireland's Food Safety Authority found horse DNA in a bunch of samples of beef patty. I mean, people usually make their own burgers because they actually
actually want to know what's in it. They're trying not to play Russian roulette with whether or not you're eating horse meat. And wasn't there horse meat found at IKEA? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a thing, IKEA. Our number 6 slot goes to autocorrect. I mean, this one isn't technically a disaster, but it definitely has led to some disastrous miscommunication. In Lisa's on Ice in season 6, episode 8, students at Springfield are trying to make a note on their device to try to beat up Martin, but the device autocorrected to say eat up Martha. It was making fun of Apple's Newton device, which came years before any sorts of, sophisticated iPod Touch or iPhone even entered the market. It apparently served as inspiration for technology from Apple to improve the keyboard. But that doesn't stop my autocorrect from changing words that I don't want to be changed and making me so ducking mad. Our halfway slot goes to a white tiger attack. Well, this one happened in season 5, episode 10, titled Springfield. In this episode, a Simpsons universe duo called Gunter and Ernest, clearly meant to resemble Siegfried and Roy. If you guys remember those two, they were viciously attacked on one of their Vegas shows by a white tiger. Then 10 years later, Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy actually was attacked by their white tiger at their show. Although injured, Roy luckily survived the attack. Next up, number 4 is the gory billboard. Season 4, episode 6, titled Itchy and Scratchy. The movie shows a billboard for a movie obviously called Itchy and Scratchy that sends Scratchy's blood shooting into cars that are just driving by. Over 15 years later, 2008, a billboard for Kill Bill Volume 1 did the exact same thing, splattering a parking lot and all of the cars in it with bright red blood. I really hope that stuff washed off easily, because I think I'd be really upset if I found my car had fake blood all over it. I mean, real blood or fake blood, I still have to clean that stuff up. Take number 3 slot is one that's honestly insane to me. In the Simpsons movie, Marge threatens to expose the government's secrets. I wonder what secrets they have. Well, she's brought into a room that is filled with computer monitors and government officials listening in on private phone calls, trying to find incriminating statements or evidence against members of the public. Well, 6 years later, Edward revealed to the public in a huge scandal that the NSA actually is listening in and spying on us. I mean, how did the Simpsons know? This breach in privacy and security was absolutely huge, and honestly, it still kind of scares me, the control that the government has. Coming number 2 is the God Particle. I'm talking about season 10, episode 2, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace. Homer decides to become an inventor. In one scene, he is standing in front of a super complicated equation on a chalkboard. Well, as it turns out, this equation accurately predicted the mass of the Higgs-boson particle, or the God particle, before it was even discovered. I know this one isn't technically a disaster, but it's absolutely crazy to me that the Simpsons predicted the particle that explains how everything in the universe exists and where it all came from. And finally, closing us off in at number 1, we gotta do it. We're talking about the virus. Did the Simpsons actually predict the craziness going on right now? Well, yeah, let's go back to season 4, which was years ago, episode 21, Marge in Chains. Well, the Simpsons predicted the very pandemic that we're dealing with today. Well, kind of. Well, I'll let you guys be the judge of this one. Part of the plot of this episode is a factory worker in Japan coughing into boxes after explaining that he has the flu. The box then gets shipped to Springfield, where the flu is released and ultimately infects many of the characters. The flu in this episode has no known cure, and in one of the scenes, a doctor even says that the best thing to do is to rest, and any medicine that they would give would only be a placebo, like no medications will work. Sound pretty familiar or what? Well, there's a series of images circulating around right now on the internet, one of which shows a newscast with the words coronavirus behind him. However, the specific image was actually altered. It's not a real image, I'm pretty sure. The original didn't say anything about corona. If it did, that would be absolutely insane. Regardless, there are still way too many key similarities that are just a bit too close for comfort for this one.
Want to see more videos like this one? It's about military experiments that the government tried to hide and bury deep down. Click the video now to find out more. See you in the next video.